Bibles. So I want to read in John chapter 3, please. John chapter 3, and reading from verse 22. John 3, verse 22. This is the word of the Lord. After this, Jesus and his disciples went out into the Judean countryside, where he spent some time with them and baptized. Now John also was baptizing at Enon, near Salem, because there was plenty of water there, and people were coming and being baptized. This was before John was put in prison. An argument developed between some of John's disciples and a certain Jew over the matter of ceremonial washing. They came to John and said to him, "Rabbi, that man who was with you on the other side of the Jordan, the one you testified about, look, he is baptizing, and everyone is going to him." To this John replied, "A person can receive only what is given them from heaven. You yourselves can testify that I said, I am not the Messiah, but am sent ahead of him. The bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens for him, and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine, and it is now complete. He must become greater, I must become less. The one who comes from above is above all. The one who is from the earth belongs to the earth, and speaks as one from the earth. The one who comes from heaven is above all. He testifies to what he has seen and heard, but no one accepts his testimony. Whoever has accepted it has certified that God is truthful. For the one whom God has sent speaks the words of God. For God gives the Spirit without limit. The Father loves the Son and has placed everything in his hands. Whoever believes in the Son has eternal life, but whoever rejects the Son will not see life, for God's wrath remains on him." Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for your word. We ask in these moments that you will speak into our hearts, Lord. You will help us to see Jesus afresh and to have that desire to lift him high. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Just tonight we have a student from the college commencing his second year placement with us until about Easter time. And I have to confess that the thought has crossed my mind, what if he's a better preacher than me? What if the people like him more than they like me? I know I've just gone down in your estimation, having confessed that to you. You didn't think that pastors thought like that. Well, some of us do. Maybe the more spiritual ones don't. But this one does at times think like that. But you know, John the Baptist had no struggle with such feelings of insecurity. John was more than happy for Jesus to increase in popularity at his expense. And that's exactly what was happening here in the passage that we've read together in John chapter 3. Jesus is growing in popularity, and it appears to be at John's expense. Look at verse 26. John's disciples come to John and said to him, "Rabbi, that man who was with you on the other side of the Jordan," that's Jesus, "the one you testified about, look, he is baptizing and everyone's going to him." John's disciples saw this as a bit of a problem for John. They reckoned that John might need to do something in order to exert himself and regain his dominance again, because they have noticed that everyone is going now to Jesus to be baptized instead of to John, and his disciples see this as a bit of an issue. But John's response to Jesus' growing popularity is amazing. It's one of great humility. We have his response in verse 29. Beautiful verse. John says, "The bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens for him, and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine, and it is now complete." Here is John's response to Jesus' growing popularity. He says to his disciples, "Listen, men, what you have just told me has made my day." What you have just told me about Jesus growing in popularity, people are going to him to be baptized. He says, that has just made my joy complete. You have made my day. What a response from John. You know, as we analyse John's response, I think here we see a man who understands his mission. Here is a man who understands mission. And he helps us to understand what our mission is, what the mission of the church is as well. Here we see that John fully understands that his job, his mission, has simply been to promote Jesus, to direct people's attention towards Jesus, and that's what his mission has been, to do. And he now sees that is happening, that people are turning to Jesus, people are noticing Jesus, people are talking about Jesus, people are going to Jesus to be baptized instead of him, and John says, this is great. Here is a man who understands mission. It's all about directing people's attention to Jesus. It's all about getting people talking about Jesus. It's all about helping people to notice Jesus. Here's a man who clearly understands his mission, and I think helps us to understand our mission as well. That is the mission of the church. That's the mission we have been given. To publish, as the old hymn says, to publish abroad his wonderful name. To put Jesus out there, to lift Jesus high, so that people will notice Jesus, and not our church, and not us, but that people will be talking about Jesus. So here's a man who understands mission, but also we see John is a man who's committed to mission. Committed to mission. Look at what he says in verse 30. After he has just said to his disciples, well, what you've just told me has made my joy complete. He then says this concerning Jesus. He must become greater, I must become less. He must become greater, I must become less. Here is a man who doesn't just understand what mission's about. It's about lifting Jesus high. It's about putting Jesus out there. Here is a man who's committed to mission. He says, he must become greater. I must become less. These are more than words for John. John means this. This is my desire. This is how I want to live my life. This is my purpose in life, that I might live in such a way that Jesus every day becomes greater and I become less. Every day through my influence, that people notice Jesus more than they notice me more. Every day through my influence, I want people to be talking more about Jesus than I want them to be talking about me. Here is a man who is committed to mission. Friends, if we're to be serious about mission, this needs to be our mantra as well. This is a mantra for mission. He must become greater, I must become less. You know, he will never increase unless we decrease. He will never increase. People will never notice him through our influence unless we're prepared to decrease. If we want him to increase, if we want people to notice him, be talking about him, we need to become less concerned with our own reputation, with our own profile. So we do. We need to become less and less concerned with that, and more concerned with his reputation. But let's look a little closer at what John says here. He must become greater, I must become less. These are challenging words. The first thing concerning what John says here is, this is contrary to human nature, what he says. Contrary to human nature. There is something within us all, there's certainly something within me that wants to make a name for myself, that wants to elevate myself. There is certainly something within my heart that wants to do that, but I have to constantly fight against. So what John says here is contrary to human nature, but it's also countercultural. Listen to what John says. Jesus must become greater, I must become less. When last did you hear society say to you, make yourself small, humble yourself? Society doesn't say that. Society says, be bold, be brazen, exert yourself, express yourself, put yourself out there. That's what society says. And I'm sure it was no different in John's day. And so what John says here is not only contrary to human nature, but it is countercultural. It goes against the tide of society. And it certainly does today. And you see, folks, mission is both those things. And that's what makes mission hard, if we're honest. In a way, it's contrary to human nature. Mission is all about the church, not putting its name out there, but putting his name out there. We might rather put the name of our church out there, the name of our pastor, our preacher out there, but it's not about that, it's about putting his name out there. Mission is contrary to human nature. Mission is countercultural as well. It's not about promoting us ourselves. It's about fighting against that and lifting his name high. But you see, how is he able to do this? Well, I think the reason that John was able to desire his decrease so that Jesus would increase, I think it's all to do with perspectives. John is the right perspective on a number of things. And if we are to be able to do this as individuals, as a church, he must become greater, I must become less. If we're to be more concerned with his reputation, getting his name out there instead of our name out there, we need these same perspectives. Firstly, John had the right perspective on himself. Let me just give you a few examples of this in the passage. Firstly, in verse 31, listen to what John says. The one who comes from above, that's Jesus, is above all. The one who is from the earth belongs to the earth and speaks as one from the earth. He's got the right perspective on himself. Here he's contrasting himself with Jesus. He's acknowledging that Jesus has come from heaven. He's come from above. He says, me. He says, I'm from the earth. And I speak as one from the earth. He says, I'm earthly. I'm dust. And dust I will return to. He's the right perspective on himself. We need that right perspective on ourselves, so we do. But also, look at what he says about himself in verse 29. Verse 29 is a beautiful verse. Let's just read it. John says the bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens for him, and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine, and it is now complete. I think in this verse, John sees himself as the friend of the bridegroom. The bridegroom being Jesus. The bride we know from other scriptures to be the church. He's the bride here, he's the bridegroom, and then he talks about the friend of the bridegroom. If you like, the best man. He says, that's all I am. I'm not the bridegroom. I'm not the bride. I'm just the friend of the bridegroom. That's how he sees himself. Well, in a sense, he is the bride as well, as part of the church. But he just sees himself as the friend of the bridegroom. I'm sure I was at a wedding yesterday, and I'm sure we've all been to those weddings when you have had an overconfident best man who thinks it's all about him and thinks everyone wants to hear from him. If he only knew everyone is really saying, would you ever be quiet? Would you just sit down? It's not about you, best man. It's about the bride and groom. You're just the friend of the bridegroom. And that's what John says here. Me. I'm just the friend of the bridegroom. I'm privileged to be his friend. My task has simply been to point the way to his coming. You see, John is the right perspective on himself. He's the right perspective on the purpose of his ministry. He makes that clear in verse 28. He says, you yourselves can testify that I said, I am not the Messiah, but I am sent ahead of him. He's the right perspective on the purpose of his ministry. He says to his disciples here, listen, remember I spoke to you in the past. Do you remember what I said? I didn't say I was the Messiah. I simply told you I was sent ahead of him. My task was to prepare the way for him, to tell people he was coming. See, he's the right perspective on the purpose of his ministry. And we need that as well. I think the church needs that today. To regain that focus, what is the purpose of our ministry? It's the same as John. It's to point people to Jesus. Point people to Jesus. Oh, you're from Newry Baptist Church. That's a great big church. And then you talk about Jesus. Not about the church. He had the right perspective on the purpose of his ministry. Also, he has the right perspective on his ministry achievements. Oh yes, God has used John mightily. John has achieved much under God. Many have come to him to be baptized and so forth. But he has the right perspective on his ministry achievements. Look at what he says in verse 27. He says, a person can receive only what is given them from heaven. A person can receive only what is given them from heaven. And here he's acknowledging that his preaching, his baptizing, all that he's been able to accomplish is because God has permitted him to do that. That has been given to him from heaven. The reason that John is able to say, he must become greater, I must become less, is because he has the right perspective on himself. May God give us, may God give me the right perspective on myself. But he's also the right perspective on Jesus. And this is so important. The right perspective on Jesus. You see, John is quite happy to decrease so that Jesus might increase, because he sees Jesus as superior. Superior. We'll just run through this really quickly. He sees him superior in a number of ways. He sees Jesus as having superior authority than him. Verse 31. He says, the one who comes from above is above all. He's above all, Jesus. He's come from above, he's above all. Verse 35. The Father loves the Son and has placed everything in his hands. The Father has placed everything in his hands. Jesus himself could say, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. He's got superior authority, and John knows it. He's come from above and is above all. Also, he sees him as having superior insight. Look at verse 32 of John 3. There John says, he testifies to what, he's speaking about Jesus, he testifies to what he has seen and heard, but no one accepts his testimony. Remember how Jesus, when he came into the world, they didn't want him, didn't want his testimony. What was he testifying to? He was testifying to what he had seen and heard in heaven. He had come from heaven. John recognizes that Jesus is superior insight. He has seen, he has heard in heaven. Superior authority. Superior insight. His words, John reckons and knows, are superior. Look at verse 34. For the one whom God has sent, Jesus, speaks the words of God. For God gives the Spirit without limit. The one whom God has sent speaks the words of God. For God gives the Spirit without limit. John here is contrasting the words of Jesus with the words of man, even with his words. John has only been able to speak according to that which he's been given by the Holy Spirit, that which God has given to him. But John sees no such limitation when it comes to the words of Jesus. He speaks as one without limit. He speaks as the one sent from God. His words are not limited in any way. This is why John, quite happily and humbly, says he must become greater. I must become less. Because the authority of Jesus is superior, the insight of Jesus is superior, the words of Jesus are superior, but also he sees Jesus as having a superior relationship with the Father. Superior relationship. That's referred to and hinted at in verse 35, where John says the Father loves the Son and has placed everything in his hand. Father loves the Son. That takes us to the baptism of Jesus. It takes us to the transfiguration when God spoke from heaven and said, this is my beloved Son, and him I am well pleased. Whenever you start to put this all together, how John sees himself, how he sees Jesus, is it any wonder that he comes to this place where he says he must become greater? I must become less. But there's one last reason why he's able to say that. And it's because he's got the right perspective on salvation. He understands the salvation equation, if you like. We see that in verse 36. Listen to what he says. Whoever believes in the Son has eternal life. Whoever rejects the Son will not see life, for God's wrath remains on him. You see, John here shows that Jesus has a superior position within the salvation equation. He's the critical part of the salvation equation. And John makes that clear. He says, whoever believes in the Son has eternal life. Whoever rejects the Son will not see life, for God's wrath remains on him. John, why don't you want to put yourself out there? You're a gifted preacher. God has used you. Why don't you want to make an even bigger name for yourself? Why are you so concerned with making a name for Jesus? I think John would say, because whoever believes in Jesus has eternal life. It's not whoever believes in John. It's not whoever believes in our church. It's whoever believes in Jesus. It's all about him. It's not about me, he said. And friends, as we almost finish, in verse 36, there's two groups of people. And John makes it so plain. There's one group has eternal life. And there's another group which is still under God's wrath. And as I finish, I just want to ask you this morning, which group are you in? The group that has eternal life? Or the group that's under God's wrath? Well, how do I know which group I'm in? Well, it's all to do with Jesus. John says, whoever believes in Jesus, and the Son has eternal life. Whoever rejects him, says no to him, shall not see life, for God's wrath remains on him. Have you believed, turned to, trusted Christ's finished work on the cross for your salvation? If you have, on the authority of God's word, you have eternal life. If you haven't, you still abide under the wrath of God. Oh, if that is true of anyone, may you change groups today. May you believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and have eternal life. Mission, according to John, it's not about making a name for yourself or even your church. Mission is all about making Jesus visible to all. And if that means us getting smaller so that people might see him, so be it. That's mission accomplished. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for your word. Your word is so precious, Lord. Lord, the people in Newry don't need to hear my musings and my thoughts, Lord. It's your word we need to hear. And I pray that you will take your precious word of truth today and use it to give us that right perspective on ourselves, but also on Jesus. So that as individuals, as a church, we will be able to say with John, he must become greater, I must become less. We ask these things for your glory.